This week on the Hollywood and Toto Podcast, well, we give a quick final look at the Oscars coming this weekend, quick predictions, and why this could be a bit of a swan song for the whole darn thing. And we talk to actor D.B. Sweeney about his new film, Protector. It's a cross between First Blood and Taken, and he's got a unique look at not just the film, but Hollywood in Toto. Sorry.
Welcome to the Hollywood and Toto Podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
Well, it's Oscar weekend, and that means the longest night of my career. Oh, every year I dread this night. And isn't that a shame? It should be the most joyous event of the year for me. I'm a film critic. I love movies. I genuinely still love movies. But of course, it's too long, and we've got, you know all the reasons why people are fleeing from the particular ceremony each year. The lectures, the egos, you name it, it's there. And it's a shame because it should be a tighter experience. It should be just a glowing advertisement for movies, and too often it's not.
Gentle Jesus, please make it stop.
But this year I want to focus on two things of importance. One is these Oscar campaigns. They're just so silly. And you can tell they're silly by Jessie Buckley. Now, she is the star of Hamnet. She is favored to win Best Actress. She's wonderful in it, a great actress, The Bride notwithstanding. But what's interesting about her is that in her interview not too long ago, she talked about Cats. And it turns out she's not a huge Cats fan. Well, spoiler alert, neither am I. I never had a cat, not a big fan. If I had one, I'm sure I'd love it. But that's it. I'm a dog person. Who cares? But obviously a lot of people cared. I guess Cat Nation rose up in outrage. And then she went on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, the low-rated Tonight Show, by the way. And she said, no, I love cats. I just love them. I'm thinking, she's doing damage control because she's in an Oscar campaign and she can't have anything that works against her.
Will you forgive me, honestly?
Now, in years past, there were smear campaigns left and right, all these different studios trying to say, oh, don't vote for that movie or that actor because he or she's done this, or that film is problematic because of that. And it's getting worse. And then in recent weeks, we've also seen Chalamet Gate, where Timothée Chalamet said, yeah, people don't really care about the ballet or opera these days. And he's mostly right. It doesn't say the art forms aren't beautiful or wonderful or necessary, but from a populist point of view, they are suffering.
Wake me when it's over.
And of course, she's been nonstop attacked. I mean, you think the world was ending based on what he said. Now, I think what he said came out either around the time or after the Oscar voting closed. But if it didn't, could that change some hearts and minds? Possibly. It's just how silly this whole process is. Listen, if you've got Roman Polanski and he makes a great movie and you're thinking, I'm not going to vote for him because he admitted to being a child rapist. I get that. I'm okay with that canceling out your vote. But otherwise, for the most part, if an actor behaves badly, if the film is wrong in a certain way, but it's a great movie or a great performance, you got to vote for it and you got to vote for it first. But I think we're drifting away from that whole experience. It's about, what did the actors say in the red carpet? What had they done? Did they have all the right positions? Did they put their foot in their mouth in a certain interview? Vote for the best of the best. And that's why the whole diversity box checking situation has been so terrible for the industry, because a best picture is the best picture. It's not because it had representation behind the screen or hit themes about people who are not being treated fairly in X, Y, or Z. Sorry, not that those things don't matter in the big picture, but we're talking about the big picture. We're talking about the best movie of the year.
You see what I did there?
So for these reasons, it feels like every year the Oscars get smaller and smaller. And this whole industry it's in trouble. I mean, we've talked about it at length on the show, no filming in LA and the contraction that's going on with different streaming services. Of course, the Paramount deal with Warner Brothers. And then there's AI lurking not so far around the corner. When you have big stars like Ben Affleck seemingly teaming up with AI technology, it's coming. It's coming fast. And it's going to change so much of Hollywood. So much of what we talk about right here at Hollywood and Toto. So for all those reasons, it feels a little bit melancholy this weekend to catch the awards. And I pray they're not political, and I pray they're not divisive. And I don't want anyone out there saying, I like Donald Trump. I don't want that as much as I don't want ace out speeches. But I don't think they can help themselves. And the fact that Jimmy Kimmel is going to be one of the presenters, well, here's my rock solid prediction. At least a standing ovation. Who knows how long it could last? And I'm sure he's going to go there because that's all he really does. He's not even a movie star. And then, listen, he hosted several times. I understand why he could be there, but he just divides. He doesn't unite at this point.
Could you please go away?
So there you have it, the 90th Oscar ceremony coming this weekend. Buckle in. And I bet many people watching right now are thinking, yeah, I've got something else to do that night. And I feel your pain and I understand, but it's my job. I've got to watch. So I will be watching it on your behalf if you're tuning away. Let's just hope that Conan O'Brien just sticks to the funny, celebrates art, and they all realize why they're there in the first place. Because once upon a time, it did matter. I just don't know if it ever will again. Our next guest is a survivor in the industry. And I don't say that loosely because you think about all the people who get a break, star in a few films, and they fade away. Hey, whatever happened to so-and-so? Well, D.B. Sweeney is the opposite. He just keeps on working, keeps on collaborating with great directors like Spike Lee, and diversifies as well, as you'll see in a few minutes. D.B. Sweeney is the co-star of a new film called Protector. It's a cross between Taken and First Blood. It's about a military veteran played by Milla Jovovich, and she is trying to find her daughter who has been child trafficked. And of course, that's just about as horrible as you can imagine. And like Taken before her, she has a particular set of skills. Now, you're going to learn more about DB's character, what it was like behind the scenes on the film, how he reunited with an old friend, which is a great story, and so much more. DB has made some great movies over the years, Memphis Belle, Gardens of Stone, The Cutting Edge, which holds up beautifully, by the way. And I'm sure he's heard the term topic more than a few times in his life. And I'm sure it makes him smile every time, just like it does with me. Just a real good guy. We've chatted off mic a time or two. He just seems like a solid person. Just maybe the antithesis of what you think about from a Hollywood veteran. Anyway, I'm delighted to have him on the show. Again, Protector is in theaters right now. Go see it. Check out his latest performance. And right now, listen to a chat with the great D.B. Sweeney.
I'll leave it.
Well, DB, thanks for joining the show. It's a pleasure to speak to you. Obviously, I want to dig right in to Protector. Now, I could sell it all I want. It's my kind of movie, but you've been on the set, you're behind the scenes. What's your best sales pitch for the movie? Because I think you have the most unique perspective on things, and you can share a little something that we just don't see from the trailer.
Yeah, well, I was excited to work with Matthew Modine again. We hadn't worked together since Memphis Belle. That was the big draw for me. And then Adrian Grunberg is such an interesting director, having worked with Mel Gibson and Ridley Scott as an assistant, and then Get the Gringo's a great movie. He did First Blood. I mean, he's proven himself in the action space. And I was an admirer of Milla Jovovich. I think she's very believable as like a girl power kind of butt kicker, which a lot of times I roll my eyes when I see a 100-pound woman punch a 200-pound man and he goes flying through a wall, but Milla has a little more, physical, bona fides, I think. And she's also very good with weapons and stuff. So, it's basically Taken with a woman who loses her child and tries to get back and has to go through a lot of people to do it. And I think it's what they used to call a popcorn movie. And it's not trying to, save the world or reinvent cinema. And it's just a fun ride.
Yeah. Now, you've been in so many movies. I imagine each one has memories or moments or just things about them you'll remember for quite some time. Anything about this movie? Was it the reunion, reuniting with Matthew or other things? What jumps out at you about the whole process behind the scenes?
Well, Matthew and I, we were in Memphis Belle together, but we didn't have a lot of scenes together. And what we spent 4 or 5 months together, socially off camera and so forth. Maybe 6 months, actually. We were in England together. And, we had this great friendship. We both lived in New York at the time. So when we finished the movie, we came back. So coming back after all those years and standing on the set with him, we have, without spoiling it, we have a little bit of a fight altercation scene. And it was just fun to be opposite a great pro like Matthew, who's also a friend. And, my character gets the worst of it. So you have to sort of trust the other guy to take care of you. And I just felt great doing it with Matthew. And Adrian's a very sure hand as a director. So that was really a memorable day for me. It was freezing cold in New Mexico this night. We were shooting this fight scene. And but I just thought, man, I love my job when it's like this, when you have great people and you have a cool little scene.
There are certain jobs where you never stop learning. If you're a doctor, there's always new medications, new procedures you have to do. Is acting like that for you, where you're always thinking, gosh, I didn't think about it that way? Or you watch a fellow actor or a director gives you a tip or something where you go, wow. I mean, is it, do you kind of find that sort of the eternal classroom syndrome is happening as an actor?
For sure. The whole movie making process has changed. I mentioned earlier that I think we filmed 4 months on Memphis Belle. This movie we filmed it was about 3 weeks, the entire shoot. So there's definitely a different pace of operations these days. I would love to be on a David Fincher movie doing take 46. Hopefully I'll be good somewhere in the first 44 takes, but 45 takes. But, the idea of experimenting and trying things, that doesn't really happen that much anymore, just because they shoot movies in 22 days or 30 days. And if you get to take 5 or take 6, usually it's a sign that something's not working. And if you make a habit of that every day, the word gets around, you can't get the movies done with this guy. So, there is an aspect of, just the tempo of filmmaking these days is much, much faster. And there's less time to try different things and experiment. But every director's different. Adrian would let Matthew and I do something if we wanted, and there was I didn't feel like I was under undue pressure. But you just sort of know in your mind, we have 3 hours to get this scene. We don't have the whole day.
I think Clint Eastwood uses that same philosophy too. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's funny you working with Matthew again. You guys came of age around a similar time in the 80s, and so much was different as far as the not just making movies, but the way they're released and how you see them now. Did you guys talk about that at all and sort of compare notes about it? It's very easy to make a lot of films early and then just kind of fade away. But you guys are survivors. You guys are keep making films. You keep kind of making your presence felt in Hollywood. I was kind of curious if that was kind of part of your conversation, or that's reflecting on an industry after all this time.
Well, I definitely asked Matthew, how do I find myself a Stranger Things where I can all of a sudden be relevant to a whole new generation the way he has, and he was show. That it is helpful when you score something like that. TV, especially these streaming shows on Amazon and Apple. That's where all the best writing talent is now. That's where all the best budgeting is. That's where all the money's flowing to. Taylor Sheridan, to me, is far and away the best in the business, and he's got a very specific model, which is get a big star like Stallone or Billy Bob Thornton or Nicole Kidman or whoever the case may be, and then spend a lot of money on every episode and make everything first rate. So, I'd love to catch on in that shop. But I feel very blessed. I'm over 40 years, and Matthew and I talked about how the year he had Full Metal Jacket come out, I had Gardens of Stone come out, and then the dark horse of the 3 Vietnam movies was Platoon, which ended up being the one that lit the world on fire. And, obviously Full Metal Jacket is now regarded rightly so as a classic movie. But at the time, I think people viewed it as a disappointment, as they did Gardens of Stone, I did with Coppola, because he hadn't made a movie in 5 years, and this was his return to Vietnam. So, I remember the pre-release publicity. Platoon was definitely the also-ran, which is very funny that it blew up the world, won the Oscars, and made gazillion dollars. But Matthew and I talked a little bit about when Kubrick puts you in his movie or Coppola puts you in his movie, that buys you several years of people are just going to throw you in their movie because that guy picked you.
And also, I imagine as you get a little wiser about the industry, to kind of take the hype as it comes, because, years later, we look back at Gardens of Stone as this epic movie. A really great movie, and it doesn't matter what the box office was at the time. It has endured, and obviously Platoon has as well. I talked a little bit, one of the directors you worked, I think it was twice, was Spike Lee. Oh my gosh, what a character, but obviously what a talent. What jumps out at you about those experiences? And I imagine it's a one-of-a-kind moment when you've got him calling the shots.
Yeah, it was Spike and I met actually at Madison Square Garden many, many years ago. We both were Knicks fans. We had seats in the middle of the arena, and every year he would move down, and I would stay the same with my buddies. We split a season ticket between 5 guys, 2 season tickets. But that's where we originally met, and then we had a bonding over sports. Right after Gardens of Stone came out, I was on a publicity tour I think it was for 8 Men Out. I was on a publicity tour, and I was at Fenway Park in Boston, and I'm a Red Sox fan. He's obviously a Yankees fan, and I had a credential. And after I did my interviews and everything, I was like, I'm going to see where I can go with this credential. I'm going to see if I can fake my way into the catacombs of Fenway Park, see if I can get into the green monster in left field. And so as I was lurking around the stadium, I bumped into Spike, he also had a credential and was kind of doing the same thing. So we had a good laugh. And then when he hired me as an actor for Miracle at St. Anna was the first one, and then Chirac was the second one. The thing that jumps out about Spike as a director is, it says right in the credits, it's a Spike Lee joint. You have no doubt as to who's in charge of every creative aspect of the endeavor. And there's a certain, Coppola's like that too. Like, the buck stops with that guy. So I really like having a very powerful director, because sometimes when there's 3 or 4 producers and, here comes so-and-so who got the money, and this female star has a lot to say. And now all of a sudden as an actor, you're sort of like, wait, do I do it her way or their way, or what do we, and you end up sometimes, in like a vanilla land where it's neither fish nor fowl. So I really like the fact that, Spike, he's the boss. And he's also very collaborative. Like one example in Chirac, I was the mayor of Chicago, and I had this beautiful wife, Ilfina Shadera, who was so good in Highest to Lowest, and she's been so good in many things. But anyway, I read this book about Mayor Daley that was called American Pharaoh, and I thought, and he wanted me to base it more on Mayor Daley than Rahm Emanuel type mayor. He wanted it to be like a machine politics mayor. So I read this book, and I thought, hey, wouldn't it be funny if like Ilfinish and I actually had this sex game where I dress up like the Pharaoh and she's Cleopatra? And I said that to Spike, and a lot of directors would have been like, that's a dumb, crazy idea. Thanks for playing. But Spike said, no, let's do it. And he got on his phone and he called the costume designer and he said, I want to shoot this sequence where DB's the Pharaoh. And it was like, and it just happened like 4 days later, and it's in the movie. And I thought that was kind of incredible that he both had the confidence to put something in that he hadn't imagined, and the trust in me that he thought it was a good idea. And it just made me really feel good about the process. And I didn't have an idea every day. That was, I'd have an idea once in a while, but I think that's why actors like working with Spike so much, is that he's a good listener and he's a good editor of ideas.
Yeah, that's a great anecdote too, and that's one of the reasons why he endures as well, because he's a collaborator, not just my way or the highway. One of the things you've been doing in, I guess, in more recent years is voiceover work, and I want to maybe you can kind of talk a little bit about that. And to the lay, be like, oh, it must be easy. You're an actor, so just doing voiceover work must be a cinch. It's half the job, no makeup, all that. But I'm sure it's much more challenging than we think. Take us a little behind the scenes of that kind of work, and what's maybe we wouldn't anticipate or expect about that.
Yeah, I mean, I got into voiceovers 30 years ago. I was always interested in radio. When I started out as an actor, I listened to a lot of the old radio dramas. Bob and Ray, and all the great comedians would all Abbott and Costello. They all had radio shows, and I loved listening to it because you close your eyes and you picture. They call it the theater of the mind, which I think is very, very real. So I was really interested in it. And then when I got into the business, I discovered there's different segments of voiceover. There's promo, which is, coming up next on CBS. And then there's narration, deep in the woods of northern Montana. And then there's movie trailers. And movie trailers at the time when I was trying it was Don LaFontaine, in a world where there are no women. And so there were very specific lanes of voiceover, and I tried to learn them all. And I've had some success in every area. I right now I have a show called Mountain Men on History Channel, which is going into its 15th season, which is crazy. I mean, if I was in the show, I'd be looking at airplanes right now. But voiceover, doesn't pay the same unless your name is Morgan Freeman. It doesn't pay the same as on camera. But so I've loved all three. And Oprah Winfrey selected me to be the voice of her network when it started, and that was all promo. Coming up next on OWN, and I just loved it because they weren't shows I'd watch, but it was fun as an actor to be like, I'm going to make this sound great. Iyanla, fix my life. It was like, I thought it was a really good acting exercise to try and convince people to watch a show that I probably wouldn't watch.
Yeah, interesting. And also I imagine it kind of sharpens your skills just overall. So when you're on the set the next time, you can kind of bring that to the party and just kind of, maybe it's better than you would normally or something like that. I imagine, sort of like a stand-up comedian doing the rep.
Yeah, I think theater has that same function for you, for your craft as an actor. Like sitcoms are very much like theater, and I hadn't done that until I did 2.5 Men, and then I did Be Positive. Great experiences, both Chuck Lorre shows. And what I learned in sitcom is very similar to doing theater and also promos, which is you can't trail your sentences off. You have to drive to the end of the sentence. Because if the audience doesn't hear the last couple of words, the whole rest of the sentence turns into oatmeal. But you can't be like, climb the mountain Thursday at 8:00. you can't, if you do it wrong, it's obviously it's off-putting, but there is a technique to it where you have to do certain things but not get caught doing them.
You're pulled in a lot of different directions, but you've also done some directing in the past. Two Tickets to Paradise comes to mind for me. Is that something you'd want to do again? Is it just too much work for, at this point in your career, you'd rather do, knock off a couple dozen movies? Or I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on that part of the game, because obviously you can do it. And I know a lot of actors will gravitate in that direction just kind of organically.
Well, Two Tickets to Paradise was a great moment in my life, but I would never want to do what I did on that again, which is write it. I co-wrote it with Brian Curry. Next movie he wrote was Green Book. He won all the Oscars for that, just rightfully so. So I wrote it, I directed it, I produced it with my own money, and I played one of the leading roles. I think in the future I would like to do maybe two of those things, and certainly not use my own money again, because that's perilous. But it was like, I played a character. I made a bad decision, to play a character unlike myself. I should have played the role that John McGinley played. John did a great job, but it would have been easier for me to play somebody more like myself. And so I think the three most successful actor directors of all time. Well, I'll broaden the list to four, but the three that come immediately to mind are Woody Allen, Charlie Chaplin, and Spike Lee. And what they all three have in common is they kind of play a version of the same character. They're not trying to create a new character for each movie. They're playing a variation, the tramp, or, Spike's always a little bit of Mookie in there. And then Woody Allen obviously is this dyspeptic, New York Jew every time, different variations of it. And the fourth guy is Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood, he doesn't get too far afield from Clint Eastwood. Obviously his first movie was Play Misty for Me, and he was playing, and he's done some jazzy movies. But, when he stays in Dirty Harry land as a director and actor, I think it's not a big, heavy lift for him as an actor. So if I do it again, direct myself, I'm going to make sure I place a character, not necessarily a dumbass from Long Island, but, I'm going to play somebody closer to myself than I did in Two Tickets to Paradise.
There's been so much change in Hollywood over the last 5 years. I think the next 5 are going to be even more momentous in a way. Technology, all things going on. If you had the ear of a studio executive or sort of a mogul of any kind, what needs to improve within the Hollywood system? And this is a very broad question, but you can basically take it wherever you want. But I think we all have stop talking in theaters. There are certain things that we all can kind of point to and say that would just make everything better. But from your perspective, having decades of experience, you're in the industry, you've seen it all. What do you think we could kind of change or nudge or just tweak about the industry that would also protect it and also make it better?
Well, I think, movies are really not very good right now. They put me in the Academy last year, which is a great honor. And so I vote for the movies, but there's 10 movies nominated for Best Picture this year. And I think 8 of them are mediocre to terrible. So I think that this may be the worst year that I've ever remembered in terms of the quality of nominated films. There's some great performances that are nominated, and obviously some great technical work. There always is. But I think that side of the business it's become tricky because all the movies, not all the movies, but most of the movies that get a big theatrical release are budgeted over $100 million, and then they spend over $100 million to market them. But most of the interesting movies of the 70s and 60s and, all through the history of Hollywood, there's been a smaller budget movie. Like one of my movies, The Cutting Edge, for example, was a $17 million budget in 1991. So that'd be like a $50 million movie today. That movie doesn't exist. It really doesn't, it doesn't happen. So you have to make a movie that's so big and so broad and appeals to what they call the 4 quadrants: male, female, under 30, over 30. You have to hit all 4 quadrants. So there tends to be a homogenization of content that has really hurt movies. And the Marvel films, I think, really were, some of them were good, but mostly it was the same movie over and over again. I think you took a whole generation of movie fans out of the business because you didn't ask them to come watch. Even Raiders of the Lost Ark in the 80s, that was a really unusual movie. And Spielberg was like, I'm going to make a movie like that, like a 1930s comic strip, and that's what I want to do. And that was great. And I think people that had a good time at Raiders, they'd go out and try another movie. But instead, if every movie you see has to be like, they're rebooting Conan the Barbarian now. They're rebooting Rambo again. It's like, in order to justify spending or risking from a studio perspective, $200 or $300 million, you have to have some sort of built-in brand identification, I guess. And so that's what's hurting the content side. I have much more specific ideas about how to save the theater business. and most of it is price point. It's, like The Bride this last weekend tanked, $80 million movie, $100 million media spend, according to reports. And so you're asking me to go out and see this movie without movie stars from a non-star director, Maggie Gyllenhaal, there's no movie that you can say, oh, yeah, I had a great time when I went to Baby Driver or something. There's no history of her delivering a hit. And so you're asking people to go out and spend $16 to $22 a ticket. So let's say it's $40, and now you want some popcorn, a Coke, and some Milk Duds. It's $80, and maybe you're a young family, you have a babysitter. So you're asking me to invest $150 to $200 to go see The Bride, and it's like, why? I mean, that's dead on arrival. So, and no offense to anybody involved, I have not seen the movie. It might be a great movie, but as far as there should be a tier structure. So when you have a movie come out like Top Gun Maverick, okay, charge the $22 or the $35 for IMAX. But like Tuesday through Thursday or Monday through Thursday, if you're going to see The Bride, it should be $9. Popcorn should be $6. Milk Duds should be $3. So you could get in and get out on a date like on Tuesday night for $35 or $40, which now you'll risk seeing a movie that has not been pre-vetted by your friends or everybody hasn't told you it's a hit. So the theater owners have resisted that for so long because the studios take such, and you probably know this, but maybe some of your listeners don't, but in the first weekend of a movie, the studios, if they sell $10 million in movie tickets on the first weekend, $8 million goes to the studio, $2 million goes to the theater owners, or some split like that. So the theater owners are counting on the popcorn. The movie is just like a loss leader for them to sell popcorn. And that whole model is broken. They need to get together. I know we had this antitrust case back in the 50s where studios couldn't own theaters, but Netflix now owns some theaters. I think we have to relax that rule where the theaters and the theater owners and the content creators are more in business together so that they both can make money at a lower price point.
Gotcha. I love those ideas, and I agree. And I think the mid-level movie is what's missing. The cutting edges of today just don't happen. I think you also maybe hinted at another problem is that the best writers are working on TV. Vince Gilligan and Taylor Sheridan, they're focusing on the small screen. So they're not doing big movies anymore, very rarely. So that's a problem.
Hell or High Water and Sicario. Imagine if Taylor Sheridan was giving us one of those every 2 years. I mean, he's gifted, but, you follow the money.
So I hope he's not stretching himself too thin because he's pretty busy. I have one last question for you. Having been in every movie, which you practically have been, and also some beloved movies, and we know them all, Eight Men Out, Cutting Edge, Memphis Belle, go on and on. When you meet with people in the public, what do they say to you? Do they recognize you this or that? Do they know your face? I mean, I'm just kind of curious, as a working actor, as someone who's been in this field for decades, what when you go out to Starbucks, can you keep some anonymity, or do you always get the look, or what's that like?
Yeah, I mean, I think I never, even when I was popping in the 90s and whatever, had big hit movies, I would never, there's places you go to where the paparazzi are. That's the big lie. Like the Kardashians and all these other people, a lot of them tip off the paparazzi where they're going to go. And so I've never had a problem with that. I mean, if you're dating somebody famous, then sometimes they'll sniff around. But I live in Tennessee. I don't think any paparazzi live here. But as far as getting recognized by the public, I did 2.5 Men about 10 years ago, and I had never done a sitcom or a network show, hit show like that. There was an incredible resurgence of being recognized everywhere I went. But now, if I was traveling the last few days in airports and so forth, people, they know The Cutting Edge is one of the ones that they really know me from. And I did this short content thing for a company called King Gesture on the internet, and there was a viral video. It was this young woman, Gen Z versus 3 war veterans. And it got this viral moment. And all of a sudden people would be like, hey, you were in that thing. They don't know what it's called, but that's an Instagram thing. So, it's all evolving. And I just did a movie with the guys that were famous from Vines, Christian Del Rosso and Marcus Johnson. They're guys that got famous on Vines. And they have this movie called Boot Lake, which was created out of the 100-page project. Totally a Gen Z kind of idea where they had 100 different people write one page in one day and then pass to the next person. And we made this movie. I don't know if the movie's going to turn out, but that's the kind of viral thinking that, I think it's interesting. I mean, they probably will slice the movie up into 100 one-minute movies after they release it theatrically. So I think they're smart in terms of distribution, and we'll just see if the movie itself is interesting enough to become durable content.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think just in this conversation, You're letting people know why you've been able to survive, not just your talent, but sort of your ingenuity and ability kind of to roll with the times and to evolve over the years. So again, thank you so much, DB, for joining the show. The movie is Protector in theaters right now. Go check it out. It sounds like an absolute blast. And thanks for the memories, man. I mean, just for making all these wonderful films, and you've made the culture richer and brighter. And for that, we salute you, and hope we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Christian, and thank you for supporting film and TV. And you're one of those arbiters of trying to hunt down the quality and champion it, and that's really important. And I hope you keep doing it.
Well, it's a bit of a shorter episode this week. I don't even have movie trivia. That'll return next week, but it's Oscar weekend. I am in demand, which is a weird thing to say. I will be all over the place the next few days on different shows. Friendly Fire on the Daily Wire, talking to Derek Hunter, who's a great podcaster and radio show host. And of course, I'll be watching the Oscars hour after hour after hour. So while I might not have the greatest weekend of all time, I hope you do. Doctor's orders.